MikeRatner.com. This is Mike's Mastermind. And we're still in first quarter 2023, which is quite amazing as I'm making this recording on Friday, March 24th, 23. And what's interesting about today is that, it's kind of a catch-up day, but I'm just in an interesting frame of mind. I want to share a story about Lord Byron, the poet. So some of you are going to be like, oh, I got to hang on for that. Yeah, for you romantic poets out there, you're going to love the story. That's not a poem, by the way, but I could come up with one, perhaps. Back to the subject, though, being Friday. My two kids, Elsa and Ellen, first one being a sophomore, the other one eighth grader, they start spring break. So they're anxious to get this week going. Originally, we thought about going to New York, or originally thought about Florida, but now they've got other activities going on, so we're just going to stay local, and we're going to do this Tosa Restaurant Week as food reviewers. Yeah, foodies. So that's a whole, these are all separate podcast ideas, and so those of you who are inclined to be producers, content providers, fellow food reviewers, that would be a cool show. Newfoodreviews.com. Man, I got all the show.coms that you could imagine and want. We just need to build a coalition, a team up, so we actually have a production schedule, perhaps, of shows and things like that. Yeah, it's like radio new Vox Redux, whatever. It's a whole new dimension of possibilities. So this talk is related to loving conversations, which, excuse me, it's clearing my throat on the mic. That is so unpro. I'm sorry, but that could be sort of like one of those awakener things. Let's get back on topic, Mike. Anyway, I'm excited for the week ahead, but I'm also looking at, it's the end of March, and we want to have a great, fun week. But what am I going to pursue here? Because I've pretty much put my feelers out in the area of sample writing and trying to reconnect with old friends and trying to reconnect into a community where we could have cosmically conscious conversations. That's the goal, right? It's why I'm doing this work. It's what I'm aspiring to, I want to be some kind of guru. I really got it, man. I'm the master of the moment. Master of ceremonies at very least. So this build up to launch something, which would be the podcast channel. Within it, podcasts like Loving Conversations, which would also be a book, a course, and some kind of certification for professionals that would help mediate, or at least bring, whether it would be couples or groups or could be teams, into being able to communicate on a level that really connects. And this is an evolving process that we've had perhaps through many different experiences in our lives. Part of it could be the process of maturation, like we're growing up. You want to do better. You've had failures in the past and you messed up and you're trying to clean up your act. It's natural to evolve in certain levels. Could it be that we could help mediate something that would be sort of like a guidepost, a simple template, nothing that isn't forced per se, other than if someone really goes wacky. No, the idea here is that, we'd have some kind of foundation to where we'd base fellowship and friendship, which is one of the projects, friendshipfellowship.com, that would be a carrier for these enlightened conversations that go out in the world. Now, this week had been very productive because I've had a number of these conversations with authors, and I won't name them off right now, and other people who are leading groups, because this has sort of been a follow-up, getting re-immersed in communityconversations.com, which was my graduate project, because the Zeidler Group, which is a very proactive public discussion group out here that's been around since 2005, is coming back into fruition after COVID. And so they're looking for a new executive director, and WA is being considered. So at least I got a second interview. We'll see if at least anything else beyond it. I think the first Zoom was great. And being in person at 8:30 in the morning, I wasn't at my best, but because I hadn't had coffee. But anyway, not that I was off, but man, I wasn't jumping on the table like I wanted to. Anyway, so that's where things are at. And so it's a kind of a coalescence of wanting to build a coalition. So these different ideas are coming together. So I felt this last few months have been pretty insightful and productive for myself in wanting to present these ideas. It just needs to get to a wider circle, but at least with community conversations, the idea is there. And these could lead to other things like a friendship fellowship or world clergy outreach, to where we're have something we can offer. And these just could be conversations in themselves where these ideas are considered, or it could evolve to best practices to where we have a template for lovingconversations.com. It is a book. It is an idea. And I want to bring in these experts onto a podcast, the next phase. And I'm looking at that as a podcast and also socialissues.com. So there's a lot to take on. I mean, the visionary, I can see a very big picture, a wide panoramic. And the perspective is good, but also it's the realization that I can't do it alone. And it's great to have an audience, and maybe people could pledge their support in some capacity. I'm not asking for money. It's not a pledge drive yet. But the idea of like having people involved and participate, and whether it's just the contribution of your good ideas or you want to get involved in one of the projects, you could refer people for interviews, experts that we could resource. You want to host a show or produce a show or just be involved in a production team or oversee this, become chairman of the board of the podcast channel. You know, these are really big picture potentials here. But it does start off with relating the idea, maybe a pitch to VCs, venture capitalists, and then having some sort of outlay of podcasts. You know, these are produced shows. Teenagepodcast.com is an example of one of those. And more than that, beyond the demo, actually getting people involved, and independently they're producing their stuff. And then if you're existing in the world of podcasting already and you want to be associated with the podcast channel, because it's nice to have sort of a home other than just the wide vast universe of iTunes, right? So here's an opportunity to, you know, you'll be there and on Spotify and everywhere else, but the podcast channel will be like, whoa, you exactly know where to find really good stuff. Okay, so that catches me up to this point to where I want to go from here. People are saying, well, Mike, man, what about that Lord Byron story? I've been hanging out waiting for this nice podcast commercial. So anyway, yeah, so many great possibilities, right? I live in a dream world, you know, and the dream is really cool, and it's very equitable, where everybody gets a piece of the action, and it's like everybody's happy. Isn't that the goal? That's the kind of conscious community conversation, you know, I want to have with. It's like, are we good here? How can we make it better? And you get excited by it. And if you got something to clean up from the past, you do it, and you do it very elegantly. You don't like slap everybody in the face unless you have to wake them up. But the thing is, like, you know, if you can get everybody sort of together in this way where we're all sort of awake and attuned, I call it the ultra beingness, ultra being present, ultra being nice, ultra being loving. And it's not like we're in some kind of weird off, you know, cult trance here. We're really awake and totally woke, right? We're sort of really present to things. And we might have an idea or a judgment occasionally, but, you know, things get worked out pretty quickly and things can get put to the side if they don't quite belong in the right place of things. And these semblance of ideas is what I'm looking for. So, Lord Byron. So of all my poets, I mean, at early age, when exploring poetry, I was attracted to Lord Byron. I mean, his life story alone, if you don't know about Lord Byron, you got to Google, or whatever your favorite search engine is. That wasn't a paid promotion. Okay, so the idea that you would have a favorite poet or somebody that, you know, you would admire for a great work or just as a good example for you in your life that this person had some significance. For some reason, I was always attracted to this image, I guess, going back to my 80s days of being cool. And for his period of time, he definitely was. But also just the impact he had. And it was on another level. So again, I want to talk about Lord Byron per se, just a story about Lord Byron. And so back in the days when I used to be Tony Robbins' national media manager, I often rarely never talk about it, but I have to make the mention here because I was in one of the cities with my team. They were the team that went out to the companies and did the pitches, and I was the one guy that went to the media outlets and bartered tickets for free advertising. We weren't paying for those ads that you see. We bartered them, and bartered them at like twice the face value of the ticket, which was inflated to begin with. At least that was a starting point for negotiations. But anyway, we got a lot of media. So I needed to sort of, I was either making copies of a media contract or some flyers. Whatever it was, it had me in a long line. It's like an Office Depot, Kinko's type thing in the day, you know, and I guess it was one machine. So there were a lot of people making copies that day. I guess we were in maybe in a campus area. And I saw the person in front of me. She had a huge book of poetry. I'm thinking, oh my God, not only got to wait in this long line, but this person's probably going to be copying that whole book. So, to make conversation and sort of get a sense of how long I'm going to be waiting, I asked her, I said, so what poem are you going to make a copy of? And she very politely turned to me and said, oh, I'm not copying a poem. I'm copying this picture of Lord Byron. And she opened the book, and I saw myself. It was such a real experience. It was like, holy crap, the person looks just like me. Not that I maybe had not noticed Lord Byron's picture before, but really been more into just the poetry and the stories. But now I saw the picture. And of course, she didn't make any connection. And I just said to her, oh, I'd love to get a picture of that too. Can you make a copy for me? I'll pay for that. She said, oh, sure. So I'm enamored because I'm seeing myself, right? So I get my copy and I head back to my team. We'd go city to city. We would get these long stay type things. We had like a workroom or something. I might have even bartered that. We had a space and phones and everything set up. And, we would be there for a few weeks, so we had to get set up. So as I go in there, I go, guys, I got to show you this. And I held up the picture, and immediately, I won't mention his name, but he was the brother of the main guy there who, we were we were buds. But he goes, Mike, man, that's you. That's you, dude. That's your past life. And everybody's like, look at that picture. He goes, oh, man, look at that picture. It's like, look at you, the way you're dressed, how you would look 200 years ago. And I think this is when Lord Byron was helping the Greek revolutionaries against the Turks. And he was wearing that kind of Middle Eastern garb for that period of time. So they must have wore at that period in Greece. So yeah, it was like, wow. And it was something. Anyway, so you could say, okay, that's remarkable. But here's the second part of the story that's even more remarkable. This is not a brag that I've been to Italy. I've been there twice. The first time on my trip, I was with a group of artists. I was supporting them for some show that they were doing in Tehran or on some mountain thing. It was kind of wild, but anyway, I got to go with. And while in Rome, we decided to have a picnic in the park. So we went to one of these big parks. And when we got out there, I was kind of looking around, and one of the artists turned to me and said, Mike, you okay? And I go, well, it feels like I've been here before. It's like, I know this park. And I'm walking around a little bit in a circle, and I go, let's go up that way. Straight ahead was like this little statue you could see in the distance. It was a big park, kind of like Central Park in New York. Not quite like that, but spread out very beautifully. And so we headed out to this statue area. And I was like, man, as we're walking there, it's like, I've been here before, man. It just feels like I've been here before. So we get to the statue area. We got our food. And then Carol, one of the artists, steps up and goes, Mike, read the statue. So the statue was in English, of all places, right, in Rome. It probably had Italian too, but anyway, this marker was in English. And this was a spot that was dedicated to Lord Byron because when he came to Rome, that was the spot that he sat and wrote. Now, for myself, in my own poems that I write, I've only really written poems maybe a couple times in my life, but on the romantic side, only once. So that in itself, when I look back at some of those poems and some of the stuff that I get inspired to do if I'm getting in a poetic mood, I think it's, if I were to be the reincarnation of Lord Byron, I think they're comparable. Now, instead of me patting my back and go, oh, what a big ego, no, I'm just saying that, if I were to be a third person looking at the two poets, in my other nom de plume realm, I'm Byron Blake. I have a byronblake.com. If you go into the old search engine, the what do they call it, Wayback Machine, and type in byronblake.com, you'll see my old website as proof. This is going back to the 90s. And there's some of my poems and stuff, short stories, which I really do enjoy. And I'm just saying that if we make these things up, whether it's a podcast or a story we tell, or it's a book that's going to help someone in some way think about things and have a reflection, or at least a moment where there's time out, there's a quality here that's present. And so I want to encourage you to produce your own podcast, whether it's your life story, or your friend's story, or Lord Byron's story. There's something here that to me is enlightening because it's engaging. And if there's a bit of upliftment, just because it's the tone of voice or the excitement that somebody has in relating something, there's value here. And to me, this brings into, or cajoles, the community conversation I'm looking for. I want to be challenged, right? I want to do better. I want to create something. And I want to connect into something that really has value. And whether these stories are made